Hello friends, today we're going to be talking about famous tea called Pu-erh, and more specifically we're going to be talking about Sheng Pu-erh, or what we call it in English raw Pu-erh. Um, we already have a few videos about Pu-erhs on this channel, and you can find them in the video list, in the playlist. Uh, and we have a video where we're comparing raw pu'er with ripe pu'er, but this video is dedicated specifically to raw pu'er. So what is this tea? What is raw pu'er? Pu'er is a um, geographically specific name. um, just like champagne or cognac, only those teas that are produced in the Chinese province Yunnan can be called pu'er teas. Even though just across the border in the in the Vietnam or Laos or Thailand, they are producing pretty much the same tea. It cannot be called pu'er technically, but unlike shu pu'er, ripe pu'er, that has a name for non-Yunnan ripe pu'er teas, they called heicha. Um, Raw pu'er does not have a name that can be applied conveniently to teas produced outside of the province of Yunnan. So, just for convenience, we call teas from Vietnam or Laos or Thailand that are produced in the same manner. We call them pu'er as well. So, semantics aside, what is raw pu'er? Essentially, raw pu'er is very similar to green tea. So there are six types of tea that differ from each other at the level of by the level of oxidation of the leaf. So in this sense, raw pu'er is processed similarly to green tea. Once the leaves are picked, uh, they undergo shaching, where enzymic um, activity is slowed down or halted. But unlike green tea, where enzymic activity is pretty much stopped, in raw pu'er, shaching goes at a slightly lower temperature, so the enzymic activity is slowed down but not stopped completely. Another key difference is that raw pu'er is produced from tea trees material. So back in the days, all tea plants were trees. They were pretty tall trees. But since humans started cultivating this plant for our convenience, we turned it into shrubs, into tea bushes. But uh, in Yunnan, in those areas, there are still tea trees growing there. And this type of tea is called Camellia sinensis varasamica. For the most part, there are other types, but we're not going to get into them right now. So, Camellia sinensis varasamica grows on tea trees. These are much bigger leaves, and tea trees, unlike shrubs, have more developed and stronger root system. So these roots, they are able to pump from the ground uh, more nutrients to feed the plant. So the leaves, they come out naturally, like richer on substance. So what are the main components of any tea? These are L-theanine, caffeine, and catechins. So L-theanine is sweet, and it regulates our nervous system. Caffeine gives us boost of energy, and it is bitter. And catechins are antioxidants, and they are astringent. So Since these leaves are so rich in this material, the tea, once it undergoes shaching, the young pu'er is very has pretty strong taste, like good tea has a strong taste. And lots of people say that raw pu'er, especially young raw pu'er, tastes bitter. Yes, there is some bitterness that comes from caffeine, but also lots of people confuse bitterness with astringency. So raw pu'er is also rich in uh, catechins that are astringent. But how you can tell astringency from bitterness? Well, these are different feelings, but astringency, it fills your mouth with saliva that brings out the sweetness, the return sweetness. Chinese call it hui gan, and it means the return sweetness. So when you drink this tea, the initial feeling may be extreme bitterness and astringency, but after like a few seconds, your mouth is all covered with sweet saliva. So that is uh, a sign of good material, and this exact astringency will turn into sweetness later on. Why? Because as we said earlier, shachin that raw pu'er undergoes doesn't stop enzymic activity completely, it just slows it down. And the tea is later, so once it undergoes shachin, it is first it is in a loose leaf form, like as you can see here. If it's in a loose leaf form, it is called mao cha, like a crude tea. But then it is pressed into tea cakes, something like this. Round cakes, they usually come in a much bigger size. The traditional size is 357 grams. This is 100 grams per cake, or they can come in the form of tea bricks. The key is that tea is compressed and it is left to age for many years. And as it is aging, this fermentation, this oxidation, it keeps going, and catechins, they turned into flavonoids. So theaflavins and then theabromins, and this initial astringency and initial bitterness slowly turns into sweetness. So the astringency and bitterness gets rounded off, and the tea becomes, after many years of aging, sometimes it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, it becomes much darker. The brew becomes much darker, and the taste becomes sweeter. And we love pu'er for its complexity and for its richness of taste. And we're gonna brew it right now and see what pu'er tea tastes like. Some people prefer uh, well aged pu'er. Some people like young pu'er. Me personally, I like both. I really like this astringency and bitterness that later on turns into sweetness, but it's an acquired taste. So let's brew it and see what it's gonna taste like. Today we're gonna be brewing 2012 pu'er, raw pu'er, chunjiang, which means spring buds. So it's been aged for 13 years. And the tea, well, I'm not gonna be a spoiler. We're gonna drink it together and see what it tastes like together. So first I'm warming up the teaware from which I'm gonna be drinking tea. And then I'm placing tea inside of the teapot. pre-warmed teapot and warm up the tea a little bit prior to brewing to open up its aroma. So let's give it a couple of seconds to warm up. And in the meantime, we're gonna warm up the cup as well and wash our tea pad. So from the warmed up leaves, I pick up some notes of prunes, of tropical fruits, and some floral notes, like orchid notes. So unlike Sheng Pu-erh, raw pu'er usually has brighter notes, especially when it's younger, when it's not too old. So let's give it the first brew. Actually, that's gonna be just a rinse. So with pu'er, because it's an HT and it needs a little bit more time and energy to open up. So the first brew is usually discarded because it's too weak. Also, some people prefer to discard the first brew because they say that pu'er can be dusty, which is true. It's been aging for many years. So we're gonna discard the first one and get straight to the second. I personally prefer short rinses and short steepings because otherwise the tea may get a little bit too bitter for my taste. So you see how bright this liquor is? Even though it's been aging for 13 years now, the liquor is still very, very bright. It's darker than your usual green tea, but it is much more pale than, let's say, you know, Sheng Pu-erh or any other darker tea. So the very first sip greets me with a pleasant bitterness and astringency right away, right from the first second, from the first sip. I feel this astringency that after just a couple of seconds starts filling my mouth with saliva. So that's what we call hui gan, the return sweetness. This sweet, sweet saliva fills up my mouth. The tea has distinctive floral notes and I would say grapefruit notes from the first couple of sips. I feel Notes of prunes are often present in pu'er teas. Apricots, something slightly citrusy. So with pu'er, it's very interesting because um, Yunnan is pretty big, and every mountain has its own tea trees, and their taste is very, very unique and very different from trees from other mountains. and it's really interesting to explore different regions of Yunnan, different regions within Yunnan. And what's also interesting about tea trees, so there are what is called old trees, ancient trees, gushu. These are wild trees that's been growing for more than 100 years, sometimes 200, sometimes 300, sometimes more. It's really hard to tell the age of tree if it's older than few hundred years old, because for the most part there are no records that could prove the age of tree. But each of these wild trees is unique. It's like has its own like genetic code. Unlike clone trees that are all essentially the same tree, copies of the same tree. So gushu material is especially sought for and is more expensive than non-gushu material, than non-wild Asian trees. And often what is done is so they take an Asian tree and then they clone that Asian tree and make tea from those clones. So right now my mouth is salivating. It's a very interesting, like pleasant feeling. So this is the second brew. As you can see, it comes out darker than the first one, a little more orangey, but still pretty bright. So I don't feel any bitterness from the tea, but there is definitely still plenty of astringency. And that means that this tea still has a very good potential for aging and transforming this astringency into sweetness. Well-aged pu'er, well-aged Sheng Pu-erh will look very, very, well, not very, very dark, but much darker than this one. Will look much closer to red tea, what we in the West call black tea, and will have probably none of that astringency going on, just lots and lots of sweetness. Also, they say that up to 20 years, uh, poor tea is aging progressively and noticeably. But after 20 years, the price grows progressively and noticeably, but the differences in taste um, become less apparent. So there is lots of brightness in this tea. There is lots of like some tropical notes I pick up from it, floral notes. Um, I instantaneously feel energy and warmth throughout my body. And I'm constantly salivating. So there is a lots of complexity going on here. There are lots of different layers of taste going at the same time. And this is exactly why we like raw pu'er, for this incredible complexity of this tea and so many variations. Very nice. Love it. And there is this warmth that goes through my entire body, like up into the head. Woke me up pretty nicely already. It's a gloomy day in New York today, and I was a little bit sleepy when I was starting this video, but just after a couple of cups of this tea, I feel much more energized. So yeah, this tea is packing lots of caffeine, plenty of L-theanine, plenty of catechins, antioxidants. I have to warn you that ropeware can be a little bit tough on stomach, so make sure not to drink it on empty stomach ever. Also, I wouldn't recommend it drinking it right after a hearty meal. I would say wait a little bit, give it a little bit of time, but your stomach should not be completely empty when you drink this tea, especially if you are sensitive. So on the third brew, or you can say the fourth one because the first one was a rinse, um, it mellowed down just a little bit, got a little bit more rounded. Still plenty of sweet astringency. Right now, floral notes are slightly fading and tropical fruit notes become a little bit more apparent. Very nice warming tea with strong cheese. So this is what raw pu'er generally is. It's bright, um, it's often astringent, especially the younger ones. Um, it has great complexity, and it's very energizing. Of course, it may differ from tea to tea. There are different qualities. There are pu'ers of different qualities. There are higher quality, lower quality, gushu, non-gushu. Different mountains produce different teas with different um, signature taste notes. But if we have to generalize, we can say that the taste of raw pu'er is usually bright, is usually fruity or floral or both, is usually fairly astringent, and it's usually fairly energizing tea. So these are the main qualities of ropeware. I hope you like this video, and sometime soon we're gonna make a video when where we're gonna be talking about ripeware, shoopware, and gonna be looking deeper into that tea in the same manner as we did with the ropeware. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, and sign up for our newsletter to stay in the know. Link is gonna be in the description and in the first comment. See you in the next video. Take care. Bye.